Thank you so much for joining us today. Je m'appelle Tracy McLeod. Je suis la dirigeante principale d'avancement ici à l'Université Laurentienne. Je suis une fière diplômée de la Laurentienne, and it is my absolute pleasure to welcome you today to the Dr. Dan Andreae Distinguished Presidential Lecture Series on Living in Healthy Communities. Quite a mouthful. And we're proud to have Matt Bonin with us, but we will do that introduction in a few minutes. I would like to begin today's lecture in a good way by acknowledging the Robinson-Huron Treaty of 1850 and recognizing that Laurentian University is situated on the traditional lands of the Atekamekshin Anishinaabeg. I also wish to honor the traditional lands of the Wanapitei First Nation, which include the city of Greater Sudbury. We extend our deepest respect to Indigenous peoples and of this region, past and present, as we reflect on the journey of reconciliation and importance of honoring those lands. For me, this journey is deeply personal. I had the privilege of contributing to the development and creation of the Indigenous Sharing and Learning Center on campus. This project was more than just raising the funds to build the building. It was a collaborative effort to create a space where Indigenous and non-Indigenous people could come together to share knowledge, foster understanding, and build relationships. Being a part of this initiative gave me a deeper appreciation for the values of community, resilience, and learning that underpin reconciliation. It is also a reminder of my ongoing commitment to the recommendations of Laurentian University's Truth and Reconciliation Task Force. I hope we all continue to walk this path with humility, respect, and commitment to meaningful change. So thank you again for being with us today as part of this incredible lecture series. Today is actually the first luncheon lecture series in the Dr. Dan Andreae Lecture in Healthy Communities. So we're really excited to try a new format coming out of a few really rough years for Laurentian and knowing that everyone needs a healthy community to move forward. So unfortunately, the namesake and the founder of this lecture could not be with us today, Dr. Dan Andreae. He is devastated, he is recovering from pneumonia, and he has sent us a video. So if I could ask Bill to please share that video with us before we formally introduce Matt.
Hello, my name is Dr. Dan Andreae, and I have the privilege of sponsoring today's lecture for you. And I would dearly love to be there, but I'm getting over a case of pneumonia. Although it's coming along well with recovery, the doctor says you can't travel for a little bit of time. So I can assure you that I will be there in spirit to be sharing with you the wonderful, inspirational talk you'll hear from Mathieu Bonin. And je suis très heureux de parrainer la conférence d'aujourd'hui. Ça serait très inspirant avec Mathieu. And we're so privileged to have him. I was actually up in Sudbury at Laurentian in June, had a chance to meet him, and was really blown away by his passion, dedication, commitment, and just joy toward life. Certainly one thing I really admire are people who are engaged in continuing education. You know, we need to do that more and more these days because things that we learn, today may well be obsolete, outdated, or changed 3 or 5 years from now. And as the world gets smaller and smaller and more integrated, having a knowledge of different areas that tie into each other just gives us that much more of a profound understanding of how things work. And I can think of no better champion of continuing education than Mathieu. He has studied formally physics, education, philosophy, spirituality. He is a lifelong learner and continues independently, especially in the field of psychology. And if continuing education was ever considered a luxury, which I think a few years ago it is now definitely a necessity. Now, just mentioning about Matthew, two things that really I find amazing. In the summer of 2021, Matthew swam across, I think, 20 lakes in Northern Ontario to raise money for charities. That was wonderful. He actually left his full-time position teaching to train for what was the Manitoulin Island swimming expedition for multiple sclerosis. And that involved swimming, actually, amazingly, 350 kilometers around the world's largest freshwater lake, and he raised $30,000 for that. So thank you, Mathieu, for everything you've done there. And so in terms of these lectures now that Matthew is going to give today, they are under the title of living under or in healthy communities. The série de conférences s'intitulée Vivre dans les communautés saines. And they actually began, about 10 or 12 years ago. I had a connection with Laurentian and the North, and I really wanted to bring experiences up to Laurentian where the community as a whole can come in to take part in the knowledge sharing opportunities, the awareness that occurs from a variety of different viewpoints. And so what we did is brought in speakers with various interests and expertise. You could almost hear a pin drop sometimes because they were so connecting with the audience. People who came in, for example, James Orbinski is the founder of Doctors Without Borders. He received the Nobel Prize for humanitarian work. He was wonderful. We had Gabor Mate. You may have heard of him. He's an internationally famous psychoanalyst, and he answered questions from the audience. It was wonderful. We had Dr. Norman Doidge, who's written books on brain plasticity, showing how the brain can be rewired and can help lead to greater potential for all of us. We had Stephen Page. Now, some of you may be music fans and would know him as the lead singer of Bare Naked Ladies. Well, it was really fascinating because he had a really famous song about 20 years ago. You may know it, If I Had $1 Million. He was on the top of the world, and he said, I was depressed. I had manic depression, and I was in Toronto, and he's very open about this story. He said, at the height of my fame, I wanted to jump off the Bloor Viaduct here in Toronto and end my life. So really showing that fame and fortune and external accolades cannot account for how we do feel inside. We had the Olympians, Joni Frechette and Alexandra Bilodeau, who shared their exciting experiences taking part in the Olympics where medals were won. And we had Theo Fleury. Now, any hockey fans out there? Theo Fleury was a Stanley Cup winner years ago with the Calgary Flames. He had had some unfortunate, very sad experiences with a coach who took advantage of him. In a sexual way, he's very open about it. And his struggle to overcome the barriers in his life and get his life to a place where he can enjoy it now. And to share that experience, you could hear a pin drop. It's really interesting because these lectures are held in February, or have been held in February, and at the peak of some of these, we've had 900 people, free, open to the public, and the rafters will full of people who wanted to come and share the experience. One thing I love about Sudbury and Laurentian is that very strong sense of community. Now, I mentioned that I've been involved in Laurentian, or with Laurentian, for a while now. I feel it's kind of like a second home. I had the privilege last June of receiving an honorary doctorate of letters during convocation, which was a real honor and a really terrific experience. I also have received an inaugural Impact Award from the university, and also because we did so many of these lectures in conjunction with the Department of Public Health, they gave me a special medal for my contribution to making this happen. So it's been a wonderful experience, and now it continues on today with Mathieu. And there's also a lecture which I certainly intend to be at in February, again, carrying on this particular theme. One of the things that's really cool, I think, is that with each lecture series that comes in, I give a scholarship to a student associated with some aspect of the topic under discussion. So, for example, if you had James Orbinski come in on human rights, somebody studying at Laurentian would receive a scholarship. These are competitive, and it's a wonderful, gratifying experience to be able to shake that recipient's hand and encourage them to carry on their wonderful work. And so I am just so thrilled that you're here today. And again, I wish I was with you. And you're going to hear a very inspiring story from a man who makes light out of darkness. So enjoy, and all the best.
Thank you, Dr. Dan. It is now my absolute pleasure to welcome Matt Bonin, a dear friend and absolute inspiration, to the podium. Or I think we all know he's not coming to the podium. He's gonna work his way around, but please join me in welcoming Matt today.
I'm coming for a hug, Tracy. I'm coming for a hug. Thank you. I'll leave that there. I desire your well-being. I want you to be well. And I trust that you want the same for me. That's the foundation for a healthy community. That's it. You can go home now. This summer, I'm driving out to Espanola to pick up my freshly printed books. I should be feeling really excited, but the truth is I feel horrible. And the reason I feel so bad is I've made a big mistake. I spent money I thought I would have, and I didn't have the money to pick up the books. And you can't unprint books. So I just felt really bad. And as I'm driving out there, I'm thinking, this is going to be an awkward conversation. So I get to OJ Graphics, and I just say, I messed up. Except I used a word that started with F. And she said, what are you talking about? I said, I spent money I thought I would have. I don't have it. I'm so sorry. And she said, can't you just put it on your credit card? And I was like, my credit card's maxed. My credit line's maxed. All I got's $400. I'll give it all to you, but I'd appreciate if you just let me keep $100 for food and gas. And she's obviously a little angry and upset. You shouldn't have printed these books. I say, you're right. You're right. I want to make this right with you. I can't tell you when I will pay you back. I can tell you I will. I have equity in my house. If I have to sell my house, I will pay you back. And now she's a little confused, and this doesn't usually happen to her. So she's thinking, and she says, I don't know what to do. And I said, I'm not going to tell you what to do. And she's just thinking, and she says, I sense her fear. I sense her trepidation. And she looks to me and she says, I'm going to trust you. And she let me take all of the books. I was expecting like a case or two max, but she let me take all the books home, which kind of blew my mind. And as I'm driving home, now I'm existential crisising because I didn't tell this to her for obvious reasons, but for me, this entire year has been an experiment in trust. I don't charge anyone anything for my book. Obviously, when you have no money, that doesn't seem like the most logical thing to do. And now that decision's starting to impact other people, so I'm wondering, like, am I just being stupid? Am I just being irresponsible doing this? Because now only I have no money, but I now owe money. But I trust in your goodness. I believe you want what I want, which is for other people to be well. I really believe in your compassion. I believe that's who you are at your core. And so I was doing an experiment and it was painful, but I was like, if I stop now, I don't have the conclusion. So I'm all in at this point. I'm just going to keep giving books. So I give books away, and somebody I gave a book to, she approached me and said, "Can I have a case of your books?" I said, "Okay," and I just gave her a case of books. And then later on in the day, completely unexpected, she transfers me thousands of dollars. And I'm just like, I don't know about you, but that's never happened to me in my life. Nobody's been like, here's several thousand, and you got nothing. That's a lot of money. So I'm crying from gratitude. I'm so grateful. And I call her up and I say, thank you. She said, "I see what you're doing and I want to support you. You don't have to pay me back. Pay it forward. In fact, I can see you've already done that." And now it's not a dilemma at all. I owe a lot of money to a lot of people. Who would you pay back first? Would you pay back those who are charging you interest? Or would you pay back the person who chose to trust you? For me, the answer was obvious. I could have easily e-transferred it, but I got in my car, I drove out to Espanola, and I was really excited to say, "I got all the money. Thank you so much for trusting me." And I just printed third times the books, and this, in a weird way, brought us closer together. But I learned a lot about trust from this experience. First and foremost, you can make really big mistakes, and oddly, that can bring you closer together depending how you handle that mistake. Because I was very transparent about me messing up. I didn't defend my actions. I knew I messed up. But she wanted what I want, was to help other people. So if you're transparent about it, if you take accountability for things, and if you obviously don't repeat the same mistakes, like if I did the same thing again, I'm sure she'd be upset. But the next time I printed books, I paid her 100% in advance, which is not their policy, but I knew I didn't want to do the same thing again. So now we're close together. It's scary to trust somebody. I know I'm trustworthy, but she didn't know that. She just gave me all the books. I could have just pieced out and not come back. So to trust is scary. It's scary. But to not trust is also scary. If you don't trust anyone at any time, that's not a good life. And you also have so much more to gain if you choose to trust. Because I guarantee you, had I sold my books, when this lady gave me money for the books, it averaged at more than $100 per book. There's no way I could have sold it to you at that price. I don't think, anyways. But if I trust in your generosity, I might get nothing, which I'm okay with because I'm giving. But I believe when you trust, most people love giving. And so if you trust, you may gain a lot more than you even imagined or conceived possible. So I believe that's who you are. At your core is a good person. And so I have another story for that. This summer I was really, really struggling. I'm happy to say that today I'm debt-free, which feels fantastic. But this summer it was not the case. This summer I was really struggling. I didn't know where my next meal was coming from. That's where I was at. I was just selling things out of my house to be able to eat. So I sell my foosball table and I get the money in my account and I'm like, I'm going to go buy food. I hope you're never there, but it's not a pleasant place to be when you're like, do I get food today or do I get gas? Those are tough decisions. It's not a pleasant place to be. So I go to the grocery store. I just sold my foosball table. I got money in my account. I go to use my debit card and you see the lines there. Declined. Then my heart sinks a little bit. She's like, just try it again. Maybe maybe you just didn't use it right. So I try again. Declined. And now my heart sinks. And now I'm feeling shame and embarrassment. And I'm just, once again, honest with her. I just say, I'm really sorry. This is embarrassing. I thought I had the money in my account, but apparently I don't. I apologize for the inconvenience because I know she has to go put this stuff back now. She does not flinch. She does not hesitate. She says, I got you. I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, I'm buying your food. I was like, my first instinct, I'm a guy, was like pride. I was like, no, that was my first instinct in my mind, you know? But the truth is, I'm hungry and I want to eat. So I've been actively practicing receiving. I think it's hard to receive. Most people love giving, myself included, but when you receive, you're giving somebody else the opportunity to give. So I just said, thank you so much. I said, when do you work next? She says Saturday. I said, I'll be back. So I come back on Saturday, and there's this huge line at her cash. But I don't flinch, I don't hesitate. I go right behind the cash. I have a nice crisp 50 from the bank, and I give it to her. And she's like, I owe you change. I was like, no, you don't. That meant the world to me. And I just gave her a hug, this previous stranger. I just gave her this really big hug. And I can't describe, I wasn't expecting that, the feeling of warmth in my chest from this previous stranger, of just hugging this previous stranger. And then I kind of just went about my day, because she had a huge line. I didn't want to make people wait. But I want to let you know that somebody you don't know values your well-being. Just as I believe you value the well-being of somebody you don't know. I think that is the core of human nature, is compassion. And oftentimes we build a society that doesn't feed to that, but I think that's who we are. You are wired for connection. And we're going to head to a Q&A after. I'm going to make a bold statement, so if you disagree with me, I want to hear from you. But I believe love and belonging is your greatest need. Even more than food, even more than water. I know it's a bit of a bold statement, but hear me out first. Because you come into this world, and if somebody's not feeding you, you're dead. Someone has to give you food. You need somebody else to survive, to make it to adulthood. It's kind of embarrassing to think about, but there was a time when you were pooping your pants. Hopefully not anymore, but you rely 100% on somebody else when you come into this world. And I think that's evolution teaching you that you need other people. And that's not a weakness. If I say I don't need water, you'd say, Matt, you're delusional. If I say I don't need other people, some people might say you're strong, but I think I'm just equally as delusional. If you don't drink, you get thirsty, you feel the physical pain of your throat drying out. If you don't have those meaningful social connections, you get anxiety, you get depression, and that's your mind's way of saying, hey, pay attention. A need is not being met here. And it doesn't make you weak, that just makes you human. But we need each other, and that's not a weakness, that's a strength. So that's my belief. I'm going to conclude where we started by saying I value your well-being. And I think the most important thing for your well-being is a healthy community. A place where you value the well-being of those around you, just as they value your well-being. So thank you for listening. Thanks, Amir. I'm going to reverse the Q&A. So if you guys have questions for me, I'm happy to answer them. But there's a lot of collective wisdom in this room. I've brought some community champions here today. So my vision for this was, I don't want to just talk about belonging. Hopefully, I want to help you find a place where you belong. That was my vision, So we got some healthy communities here. But first, if anybody has questions for me, I'm happy to answer them. If you guys don't ask me questions, I'm asking you questions. Is it what? Yeah, where? Oh, Dawn. Oh, I thought you were pointing to someone. I had a question. Yeah. What's up?
So, of course, as we all know, in this day and age of being connected to devices, pulling us further and further away from each other physically, how do we create that sense of trust if we never really? Yeah, so let's do this. As I was saying, if as we all know that we're connected to devices nowadays, and we're being pulled apart further and further because of these devices. How do we make these connections if we're not in each other's presence to receive each other's signals?
Great question.
How do you build trust?
Yeah. Great question. Thank you. I think you really do have to be intentional about it. Personally, in my mid-30s, I was very isolated. And my way of coping with that is like, let's swim around Manitoulin. I don't have to think about it then. Like, let's do this, let's do that. Let's achieve, But that's just me kind of ignoring my problems, and they're just compounding. And my instinct after Manitoulin was like, let's go do something bigger, let's go do something better. But I challenged that instinct, and I just like sat in that really uncomfortable place. But I don't think I'm alone being there. But you do have to be really intentional about it. I think the best way to get trust is to give it. That's the best way to get it. Because if I say, I trust you, you better believe you want to live up to that. So when her name's Joan, but when Joan at OJ Graphics, when she said, I'm going to trust you, you better believe I'm paying her back. I've been testing this, kind of funny, but I sell stuff on Facebook Marketplace a lot. I was like 95% sure this guy was a scam. He's like, I'm going to send you a deposit. It was just sketchy. I just said, no need for a deposit. You seem like a trustworthy person. I trust you. And the funny part is he didn't send me any follow-up messages after that. But I think I threw a curveball at him, But he wanted to live up to that, The best way to get trust is to give it. That's the best way to get it. Because if I threaten you that you must pay me back or I will charge you 20% interest, that's a threat. I'm not going to get the best version of yourself. But if I just trust in your goodness, I'm going to get the best you, I believe. And the generosity I received swimming around Manitoulin was beyond anything I could have imagined or conceived. I had to give first, and it was painful to give. But I received swim coaching for free from some of the best coaches in the world. I received sports therapy for free, sports nutrition. Everybody was giving me their time, which to me was absolutely incredible. And as I swam around the island, people were welcoming me into their houses. Restaurants were opening their doors and feeding me and my team at no cost, no charge. Right? That level of generosity was inconceivable and unimaginable to me. But I had to do it first, right? We all want to receive, but it doesn't work that way. And, there's some people say, well, I don't receive anything. Well, two things. Do you ask? And when someone offers to you, do you receive? Because if you don't receive, then you're shutting down generosity. And if you're choosing to receive, then you're creating more generosity in the world. And that's the jiu-jitsu I performed on my brain because I had a really hard time receiving is if you're receiving, you are giving. You're giving someone the opportunity to help. And I know that feels amazing. So if you receive from somebody, you're giving somebody that. That hopefully answers your question. I kind of tangented a bit there, but.
Hold on, Bud.
Yeah, hit me up. I love random questions.
In a world where the general consensus is everyone's kind of looking after, the point is to look after yourself, right? That's what we're taught. And intuitively looking after yourself will never truly mean being generous to other people, right? And it's not just individuals, it's mega corporations, it's the whole community is technically looking after themselves. So what is that incentive outside of just trying to be a good person for you and everyone else to be better if we are supposed to look after ourselves, if that makes any sense?
That's a great question. Yeah. I think The honest answer is if you're in a selfish society, to be altruistic is not in your best interest. I'll be transparent about that, because if you're giving and everybody's taking, that's not in your best interest. But it takes someone a little bit crazy to start giving when it's not in their own best interest, and hopefully that catches on. Because if it's every man for themselves and one person doesn't act that way and that catches on and you have 10 people working together, who's going to be ahead in the long run, the 10 working together or the individuals? It's very obvious the 10 working together are at a big advantage. It's not to your advantage at first, but if altruism catches on, then it is. And I hear this, it's a false dichotomy of self-other. That's a false dichotomy. The analogy I don't like is put your oxygen mask on first, which there's some truth to that. You need self-care, you need self-compassion. But who created your oxygen mask? Who placed that on the plane for you? Who taught you how to use it? Someone who valued your well-being. It's impossible to get through life on your own, even if you think you're getting through life on your own. We could take a quick gander around this room. You know, someone made this. I don't know them. Someone made my shoes. I'm assuming a lot of you drove here today or took public transportation. Someone made that. This entire building, I'm assuming most of you didn't make it. The food back there, you eat, I'm assuming every day. That comes from somewhere. It's someone who's feeding you that you've never met. And so I think that's the greatest strength of humans, is the compassion. And I think, I'll be transparent with you, it's not an advantage when you're in an every person for themselves society. It's not. But it takes those few people to start doing it for it to catch on. And then once you have an altruistic community, that's when thriving happens, I believe. Did I answer the question? Also, it just feels good, right? Your brain rewards you if you do things that are good for you. So if you go for a run, your brain's going to release some endorphins. Hey, that felt pretty good. Well, it is good for you to run, right? If you're generous and you do something kind for someone else, that's called helper's high, is a psychological term, and it's proven to be one of the best experiences as a human being. Because think about it, if we're helping each other out, that's not just good for you, it's good for everybody. And if they're looking after your well-being, that's good for you too. So your brain rewards you when you're compassionate to other people. Yeah?
I've had the pleasure of meeting, being introduced.
I went to your house. We know each other.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We're entering a season of giving. That's what happens around Christmas, and we get this happy, lovey, golden, pink feeling. How, Matt, do we as parents and grandparents, because we're missing a demographic
I'm not
here.
a parent. You're asking
I know,
the wrong guy this question.
But we're missing a demographic here. How
Yeah.
do we get our kids to be compassionate?
I don't have a good answer for you if I'm transparent, but most of the time when people receive compassion, it just feels good. And, most of the time, if someone's generous with you, the instinct is to be generous back. I have a bit crazy story with Rochelle, for example. I did my book launch at Rochelle's pharmacy. And it was just synchronistic the way it happened. Went to a meditation workshop there, and she said, I do book launches here. And I was like, perfect. I'm launching a book. Just kind of happened. And we're sitting down negotiating, and she's like, you can have your book here, and this is pretty standard rates. So I'm not accusing you of anything here. But I'll take 30% of your profit. I'm like, that's a bad deal. Like that's a bad deal for you, because I'm giving them away. Like 30% of zero is zero. Like that's not what you want to do with me, So he kind of laughed about it. But her instinct, not everybody, because I've done this, and I do see some people say, hey, I'm going to take advantage of you. And I'll let them do that once. But they're going to get the best of me. I'm not going to work with them again, But Rachel went way above and beyond. I think she charged me $50 to feed everybody, which was like, guaranteed you operate at a loss there, because there was like 200 plus people at the book launch. It was not, my crazy generosity triggered crazy generosity back. It doesn't always work that way. And if I'm giving to you with an expectation, then I'm not really giving to you, right? So give completely free of any expectations. But most people's instinct is when you're generous, is they're generous back. And if you see that this is not this person's instinct, then stop. You don't want to give to somebody who's continuously taking from you, because that depletes you. I don't think that's just setting boundaries, right? That's just, you want relationships where there is trust. And relationships where there is trust, there's mutuality to them. Yeah. Oh, sorry. I didn't see you get a question there.
You had asked about, about our opinions on needing connection more than food and water. And you reminded me once of somebody else who compared that, and it was George Chavallo, so the boxer turned motivational speaker, and he'd spoken about how losing his family and looking back on his reflection on that, and he compared, raising an infant, so a baby, and feeding them, and he said, he gave the example of, if you just took an infant and you just only ever fed it with an eyedropper and you just never touched it and only just gave them the bottle, that infant would fail to thrive without ever being touched or loved, and so that was just an example that I wanted to throw in that I think compared to that, his example. So in agreement to that. 100%.
I believe compassion is medicine, right? Like, if you're compassionate to someone, that helps them heal. Because we see the opposite, we see the detrimental effects of neglect. That's very obvious. But the opposite is true too. The compassion helps people be well. And I think it's a human need, to be in that healthy community where compassion is present. Unfortunately, we live in a little scary time where that's starting to disappear. But that just means we got to be better at it. And I believe it speaks for itself. You don't feel good when you're like super mad at somebody. I don't anyways. When I'm like, you don't feel good about yourself. It's not a pleasant, it's important to get mad every once in a while, but if you're always in that state, that's not good for you. Whereas compassion, I guess it can take a toll on you, like if you have no money to buy books, but but it came back later, I do have a question for all of you. I want to flip it now. Is one of you comfortable sharing a time where you felt a sense of belonging? Can you think of a time or a place? Oh man, that's everybody's phone's going off. Yeah. So the question I have, I'll repeat it because we got interrupted by. Can you tell me a time where you felt some belonging? Where, when, what that felt like? Yeah. Can we bring a mic over here? Oh, okay. I feel bad. Gates, could you kill if I go there? She had a question. That's my bad. Gates, you're next.
It's okay. Merci Mathieu. I'm trying to find the English expression to say faire du pouce. I believe it's to continue on or to add on to some of the things that other people have said, just in regards to self and compassion. Sorry, the mic doesn't like me. And it was just in regards to trust and belonging, and I feel like I'd like to get your input on that in regards to first finding trust and belonging.
Feedback going on.
Okay. First finding trust and belonging in yourself, and then I find that is easier after to find it in your community or with others. I find that a lot of times if I didn't trust or didn't feel like I belonged, I had to really look within and then really try and see, it's because I don't trust myself that if this situation doesn't go okay, that I won't be okay. Once you trust yourself, then you tend to give more compassion or trust others. And it just kind of brought me to the comment about self and being in a community that everybody thinks of themselves. I think there's a two-way to look at it. It's a lot of work within, and then that's how you get better with your community. But that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you.
Think.
No, that's an excellent point. And self-compassion is a skill, right? I didn't have it for most of my life. It's a skill I developed in like my mid-30s, which is much later, but that's just my lived experience. But you're right, but it's also a false dichotomy, right? Because usually those who don't have self-compassion, that came from somewhere too, right? If you're taught self-compassion, that usually came from the outside first, or if you're taught, to not be compassionate to yourself, usually that came from the outside as well. So I think it's important to have these concepts, but self-other is almost like it's a false dichotomy. It's both, right? You need both. It's not, you can't put one above the other. You need both in equal amount. But yeah, self-compassion very much is a skill, because if you don't think you're worthy of that belonging, and I've been there, then you isolate yourself because you don't think you're worthy of belonging at this place, you know? So you do have to have a good sense of interior worth before you belong somewhere. And if you don't have it, that's okay. Just know you can develop it. You know, I think it's actually a lot more common. I do a lot of talks on mental health. I think it's a lot more common than you think it is. But also I've talked to a lot of people who have acquired it. So it is a skill that you can learn. But thank you for bringing up that excellent point on self-compassion. Thank you. Gates, you were going to share an experience? I'm going to back away in case we get some more like weird stuff going on.
Hello, everybody. My name is Chef Gates. I also go by Mama G. And I'm a chef. And we talk about trusting, and we talk about building community, and we talk about how do we... COVID did a number on everybody, okay? And what I mean by that is, especially our young, is we rip them apart from everybody and say, stay away from everybody, don't trust anybody, you know, and that was a big disservice to the world. Aside from that, we are now in the era of how do we fix those feelings? How do we build trust? How do we build community? How do we do all of this? One of the things that I do as a chef and that Matt knows about is that, and I also do classes and whatever with seniors, because those are the two groups of people that were the most affected and that are the most, not sheltered per se, but standoffish. And what I'm trying to say is this, is growing up a Catholic, you are filled with guilt, and you are filled with the only community that is trustworthy is your religious community. Time goes by, we grow up, we have experiences, we find our life, we find our career, we do all of that stuff. But the one thing that we forget is that when we were kids, we trusted everybody. When we were kids, every neighbor knew where you were, knew that if something were to happen as a kid, I knew I could go to my neighbors and I would be okay. Where today, we teach our kids, I'm not sure if you should go to the neighbor. How are you going to know?
It's tough, yeah.
Right? And then all of a sudden your house burns down and everybody is opening their doors. So how do we build trust after having all of this damage, this trauma that has come to us as we are growing through adults? The teens are hard. The 20s are harder because you think you know everything, and then one day you wake up and you realize you don't know anything. Right? We've all been there. And it's just one of those things. So what I teach in my cooking classes and in my shows and all my stuff is extend your table. Invite everybody to the table. Whether they bring something or they're just there to get the energies amongst the people. That's how you build trust as an adult. And food is everything.
That's why I insisted they feed you.
You know what? It got me here. I wanted to see what my competition was, but I don't have any. But what I'm saying is I'm not humble either. But what I'm saying is one of the things that Rochelle and I worked for, and this is how we met Matt, is we extend our table. Our table is huge.
It's a healthy community for sure.
And the best way, Seasons Pharmacy 815 Lauren, the best way to like you said, to earn trust is to give trust. And the easiest way as a chef to earn trust to people is put something of integrity on a plate and put it in front of you and explain to you why I'm doing the things that I do. That way, first bite has a lot of expectations, right? But not only that, you're enjoying the people that are sitting there next to you. You're enjoying, one of the biggest questions that I ask everybody that builds everything is, what is it that you ate as a kid that brings you right back to that warm, fuzzy...
In the interest of time, Gates,
Yep.
I'm going to cut you
2
off.
seconds, 2 seconds.
I want to hear from everyone.
But what I'm saying is if you're trying to build trust within your community, make a batch of cookies and go learn who your neighbors are. Because once you know your neighbors, that neighbor is going to go to the next neighbor, and you're all going to know each other. And that's how I think as adults, food is the door.
100%. Yeah, you brought us some great points there. I got a lot to digest because a lot was said there. You're right. I think it's like, the truth is not everybody's worthy of trust, right? That's why the trust disappears. And that's just a reality of being human. But I do believe, I don't know, feel free to put your own input here, but I believe at least 95% of people are. Right? I believe. I don't know. I'm throwing this random number out there. But it's that we stop trusting because of this 5%, right? But trust you can handle the disappointments. Trust you can handle, obviously be safe about things. You don't want to be naive. But trust you can handle the disappointments. And also, I 100% agree. That's why I'm always having tea at your place. So food brings people together. If you guys want good food, definitely go to Seasons Pharmacy. This is another reason I brought some healthy communities here, and I want to name a few. So we got Seasons Pharmacy at this table over here. We got Dawn's Connected Living, right? That's the name of your Connected Living. We've got Sarah from ARC. That's one of the healthy communities I'm a part of. I rock climb and I do yoga. Gary has mindfulness communities. I know he does Tai Chi as well, so he's plugged in. If you have a healthy community, feel free to bring it out. But if you're feeling lonely and isolated, I've intentionally brought some people here that you can talk to and hopefully plug into a community that you're longing for. Try to find something you love doing and join it. But yeah, maybe that's a question I'll have too, is how many people do you think what percentage of people do you think are trustworthy? And obviously that's based off your personal experiences. I would estimate, that's my guess, is 95. But also I've gone to like people's houses I don't know. So I'm a bit on the other end of the spectrum, But 99? Oh, that's good. That's okay. Is anybody on the other end of that? Lower? Yeah? So you say 60? Okay. He deals in security though, so he sees a lot of the security breaches. Yeah. I think it is. That's a good point. It's depending what your job is, right? I know some people who work in legal and they just see that. So it's really hard to see the good in the world, The next book that I'm writing right now is on joy. And I feel like you train the filter in your mind. Like we're given such a negative filter. I watch the news for 2 minutes and I'm filled with anxiety. Like it's all the worst stuff happening in the world. Like you don't want to be naive and pretend it's not happening. But you can't just immerse yourself in that because I just feel terrible, right? So I will extend a couple invitations to you. The first is I'm doing what are called joy interviews. So if you want to come have coffee with me or tea or whatever you drink, come and I get to listen about your good times. So that's what I'm researching right now. So if you want to do that with me, I'd be happy to do that with you. And that's just fun. Like I get to hear about people's good times all the time. I'm like, hey, you know what? Life's pretty good. I've been on the other side of things where I'm really depressed and it's hard to see any good at all. But when you're hearing that all day, every day, it's having an impact that I couldn't predict. And I'm also going to conclude with an invitation. I'm starting this talk series actually inspired another idea for me. So January 28th, put it in your calendar. Rochelle's going to be there, I know. Jan as well. But I'm doing a storytelling night. So I booked the Fromagerie. There's no cost. You can show up. There'll be charcuterie boards awaiting you. There'll be food waiting for you. And then we're just having some people share some personal stories, which are hopefully lighthearted and fun. So if you're feeling really lonely, hopefully you find some stuff till then. But if But know that January 28th, you're welcome to come out to the Fromo for some food and some good times. Oh, 6:30 p.m. Thanks. Yeah, there's no tickets, so we lock the doors when we hit capacity. So it's kind of like beef and bird style porchetta bingo. If you ever done that, get there early, get your table. What's just a time check? How much time do we got left? Because we got time for more questions, or is it time to wrap up? Wrap it up. Let's wrap it up. So thank you so much. Appreciate you all coming out. Thank you so much, and come have some food with me. Thanks, man. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Matt, thank you so much for sharing your story with us today. Absolutely incredible and moving. And to everyone here today, thank you for sharing and participating with us. When we were organizing this day, Matt multiple times said how important it was to have nourishment. Nourishment gives each other trust in each other, and to hear the stories and to be able to break bread with all of you today was incredibly meaningful. And listening to you talk about how you had to make tough decisions about if you were going to fill your belly or fill your car is extra meaningful. So I know he's not with us, but he's going to be watching this. So I'm so glad that Dr. Dan has helped Laurentian University extend its table today. Thank you. I will use that again. And I will also use the helper's high. I've heard of the runner's high, which I turned into the rider's high, being a horse riding person, Jennifer. So I am going to start using the helper's high, and thank you for that term. So you and your book have moved me so much. I read it for the first time on a beach on a vacation with friends, and I was the annoying person constantly sitting up from the book and saying to my friends on either side of me, "Can I read this to you? Like, I cannot believe the adversity that this individual has faced and how he has conquered every challenge with positivity and enthusiasm for life." And we saw that today. So I just want to thank you for sharing with us today and your desire to help people. I feel I have been moved by you yet again. So merci beaucoup, miigwech. Thank you so much, Matt. So as a little token of our appreciation, Matt is a proud Laurentian University graduate. And so our thank you gift today is a Laurentian University alumni frame. Shameless plug here. But we have put a copy of the advertisement poster in it for you. So I hope you display that proudly or put your diploma in it, whichever you want to do.